Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alive. I'm so glad to see you this evening. But before I introduce tonight's guest, I want to remind you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, hit notification, and share it with your friends. And you can go onto our YouTube channel, by the way, and we have playlists, and you can see all of the Alive videos that we've recorded in the past, and we'll keep adding them there. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. Now, most of you have heard the word catfish, and I'm not talking about the fish, but the kind of catfish that we have today in our culture is typically found online, where someone will make up a fake profile and they'll try to trick you into thinking that they're someone else, and they'll make up a false story and a false narrative about themselves. And what they do is they engage in and interact with people and fake who they are. And that's what we call catfishing. And sometimes this can also happen in person. As a matter of fact, it happens more than maybe some of us would like to admit. But my guest today was stalked by someone for approximately 2 years without knowing it. And eventually this man began approaching her in friendship and finally gained her trust. And they were married and seemed to have a perfect marriage. And then after being married only a few years, she found out that he had secretly stolen all of her money and everything that she owned. She went from being an independent single mother who owned several successful businesses to becoming homeless with only $20 left to her name, literally running for her life. However, after losing so much, Ada Madison found Jesus, found life, and has built a brand new life for herself with the Lord. So, Ada, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited that you're here too. And you know, I've read your book cover to cover.
Awesome.
And I feel like there's so much that you can share with people. And I don't want to miss anything, but we're just going to have to focus.
Yep.
I'm going to try to keep myself focused because I want to ask you a lot of things. I want to show you some of our listeners today, and we're going to be giving away some of her materials. She has 2 books, adult books. Suddenly is the name of a book that she wrote, My Journey from Terror to the Miraculous. Another one, Beautifully Broken, and it is a journal to overcome. And then a children's book, Annie Banani Goes to Giggle Paws.
Yeah.
It's so cute. I want it for myself. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but you can probably see this is all of her artwork. So can you talk a little bit about you as an artist, just to let people know who you are and what you're passionate about and what you do?
Sure. I often joke that although my name is ADA, that I actually am ADD with my art, because I really don't have a fixed medium that I work in, but I tend to go in tangents that sometimes will last 6 months or a year or whatever. And digital art is new to me. Typically when I paint, I've done canvases, I've done lots of leather, I've done jewelry, I've had a clothing company. There's not a whole lot of mediums that I haven't delved in, sculpting, you name it. I started playing around with digital art. A friend of mine asked me to illustrate a book that she had written, a children's book. And I had so much fun doing it that it's like, okay, I write books, I love children, I love whimsical art. It's just a natural thing to marry the two. So these days, it's kind of fun to be up at midnight, not have to clean paintbrushes or wear different clothes. I'm actually painting on my computer, which is my latest little tangent with art.
I love that. Well, the other side is people may not know that you are also into style and hair, and you've been doing that for years. That's kind of how you started.
Yeah.
So you have a lot
years.
of, and you also paint. I mean, I've seen some of your beautiful artwork and on clothing.
Yeah.
You know, all these things. So we could go on and on.
If
I
it
have
doesn't move, I
definitely
paint
been
it.
checking you out online. So, so a lot of fun stuff. But I want to bring this to talk about this because art is such an important part of your life. You've always been creative. I think you're born that way. It's a gift from God. But I want people to understand your story a little bit better by talking. You may not want to do this, but if you would talk a little bit about your successes early in life and like what kind of life you lived and and how you were blessed early in your life.
Okay. I actually had a relatively turbulent time as a teenager, and as a young person at home. I had a brother that died very young. It was a traumatic experience, and I wound up running away from home when I was 16, and I never went back. And I, a lot of pushing to go to college or whatever, and I decided to go to cosmetology college. And my parents, I remember them saying, you're way smarter than that. Go to real college, Ada. Don't go. What are you going to be, a hair scientist? What's a cosmetologist? And that kind of negative fuel sort of pushed me to extremes. So I competed internationally, actually, with hair. Opened up a salon that wound up being very large and successful in Naples, Florida, for many years there, and then wound up opening another one in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that truly married my passion of always making art. I was always making art, but that was my weekend fun getaway time, was art. And the Milwaukee salon had a very large retail space, about 1,500 square foot of retail, in addition to full spa, full salon, that whole thing. So it was a 3-story building that was like amazing on the water, and I had I called it gift art. So it was an art gallery full of things that you could wear or for your home or for whatever. So it was a union of hair design, my art, and a lot of other artists' art as well. So yeah.
So you've had a lot of success, and you have a lot of giftedness. So then there looms the question. How does someone, and I know this is kind of fast forwarding a lot of that, successful, independent, you were a single parent at that point. I want to talk a little bit about how you go from there to where you're being basically stalked by someone. So what I thought would be interesting is for you to take us to the point in your life about a year, maybe preceding when you met the Damien. And before you married him, what was going on in your life? Kind of set a little bit of a groundwork.
Okay. Business was on almost like autopilot. It was running very well. My son was active in sports and that kind of thing in school, so I was able to kind of schedule myself to be Wonder Mom. I could do whatever I wanted with him, be at the salon when I needed to, but it kept me very, very busy. It was close to home. I was either with him or, at the salon working. My parents lived right across the alley from me in the Cedarburg, Wisconsin. It was very Norman Rockwell-like setting. It was wonderful. And the salon was about just a couple miles from there. It was very close to where we lived. And so my mother was a retired teacher, so my son was able to go to her house after school, and she did, made cookies and did the homework and that kind of thing. But life was, it was awesome. I was just living kind of on autopilot. I had all the money I needed. I was really kind of in an easy place for me. I felt like I was in an easy place. I dated, and everybody was always setting me up with one person or another, but it was always their brother or their whatever, and it just, whatever. I was dating, but no one in particular, but longed for a relationship, longed to have, meaningful companionship. And my mother, who during that time became really my best friend ever, was diagnosed with cancer not long after we had arrived back in Milwaukee. And she died about just a few months before I met Damien. And so I was in a really vulnerable place. I had to be the biceps for my father and for my son, the strong person, and try to keep the balls in the air with my business, with everything, and really didn't have a lot of time to just break down myself, I guess, to walk through that grief. And I had a very, very large art show that I was preparing for. Had a lot of pieces showing in it, and experienced some really great attention from the press and whatnot through that time. So I was excited, and then we lost Mom, kind of right, it all happened at the same time. And I actually received at that art opening this gigantic, extremely elaborate, artistic, it looked like a piece of art, bouquet of flowers. And it was from my mom. And it leveled me when that came.
So she had already passed away.
She passed away.
And now you receive a gift from your mom.
Yeah. Did my dad do that? Who did this? It really kind of leveled me. But I share that with you because I later learned that he had sent that. That was his first. He had been in my salon, knew a lot about me, but I knew absolutely nothing about him or that he ever existed. We had many, many people in and out of that business.
It's amazing to me that he. So you when you were talking about this amazing high that you were having with your business,
yes,
and an amazing low. So your emotions were probably really a wreck at that time, and you were trying to be strong for all these other people, and that's exactly the moment.
Yeah. Boom.
When he targets you, and it's like almost like he took a little bit of a chance because you could have taken that and just maybe you did a little bit take it the wrong way and like I don't like this or.
I didn't know the flowers were. It was after I got to know him that I realized those flowers were from him.
So you never.
So
who did you think they were from?
I didn't know. No one ever told me. It was just a really bizarre, a bizarre thing that I later found out was him. But he bought art at that show and started. Can I take you to lunch? Can I take you to this art museum exposition? This whatever. And he was the perfect gentleman. Absolutely perfect gentleman, and presented himself as being extremely financially successful, that he didn't need anything. And I wasn't looking for someone with money, but I didn't want someone that needed mine either. I had been in scenarios where I was kind of the caretaker, and I just didn't. I didn't understand what strength of the Lord was, but I knew I wanted a man that could lead and be strong and not lean on me for everything. I now have a far deeper understanding of truly what that means. But so he came in and he did an excellent job.
So he came in. He was treating you very well.
Yeah, extremely well.
And you were, what did you say to me on the phone about something with a car? Wait, he did something. You gave me an example. Now I don't remember what it was, of something that he did that's like outrageous, where you're just like that. Like when somebody does something that over the top kind.
He did, everything he did was over the top kind. Very, very thoughtful things for myself and for my son, for my father, for my dog.
You had nothing, no bells going off, no alarm.
No.
You're like, wow, this is like, finally.
No, the bells that went off were going off in me because in a physical sort of way, I was not attracted to him at all. I wouldn't have said he was my type or whatever. I was repelled. Not at all. I was like not at all attracted to him. And that sounds so terrible to say, but now sometimes I wonder, was that the spirit like trying to like give me a nudge then? This is so wrong, girl. But I thought I was being really shallow.
Yes.
I thought I was being very shallow. And I was in a seeking point in my life where I attended churches every Sunday. I tithed. I did what I was supposed to do for years, but I never fit in. I never understood who Jesus was. I was never really plugged into. I didn't understand any of it. But through that loss of Mom, it sent me. Jesus is near the brokenhearted. I mean, he truly is.
Yes, he is.
I was desperately seeking him.
Yeah.
I've got that.
Is that a phone going off or something?
I don't know. Can you hear it?
I do hear it.
My phone is shut off.
Okay, it's not mine. I don't know whose it. Anyway, we're moving on. Okay.
We'll just move on.
So
right?
while we're stopped, because we're going to get into some good stuff here, could you do me a favor and talk about your book? Because what I want people to do while you're talking is if you want to make a comment, we're going to give these books away, and if you're watching and you would like a copy of this book, we're going to make sure it's in your hands. The first person that I see the comment. So if you want to talk about what your book is, and then we'll get into more of this.
Sure. This one is called Suddenly, My Journey from Terror to the Miraculous, and it is just that. It's my testimony. It's from day one to a couple days ago, or a couple years ago, I should say. I started out that successful person that we were speaking of and walked out of it. Ultimately, it's been almost a year ago that the final order, I think it was just about a year and a half ago, that the final order was issued. I have a order of protection that exceeds the borders of the United States.
Wow.
It's a 50-year order, and in my world, that's a lifetime order of protection.
Yeah.
A new name, a new birth certificate, a new social security number, a new start. So this is that story, and part of it is, kind of raw and hard to read, and part of it is will have you standing and cheering because God is so good to me.
Yes.
He's been so good to me.
And I've read it, so I know how good it is.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that we have that. So, so we're going to continue. I'll take that, and we'll stop in a minute and talk about the other one.
All right.
What I want you to talk about now is, so you're married.
Yes.
Everything's great.
Yeah.
But something happened that basically shattered your entire world.
Yeah.
Can you share what that was?
Yeah. It happened in a moment. I was not a person who lived at all in any kind of abuse. I do, know and work with a lot of women that have suffered a lot of abuse, but I didn't have that. I had a picture-perfect everything happening. And I had a woman that I had known in Florida who started contacting me, and we talked and a friendship kind of over the phone more than anything else. Her name is G.
And we're going to talk about her in a minute.
Okay. G was calling and saying, you're in danger. You're in great danger, and you need to find this purple file. And I thought, what the heck, So I came home and I found a purple file sitting on desk, and I got the file out, and I should backtrack on this a little bit and tell you that I had a new car that was paid for. The car was new and it was paid for. And it was during the time that Toyota was doing a recall on ignitions, or something was sticking. Accelerators were sticking. That's what it was. Were sticking on whatever. And so my car was part of that recall. And he had come home and said, your car has that part. It's the defective thing, and they want to replace it. There's absolutely no way. I don't want my wife driving anything like that. I don't care what it costs me. I want a new car. I'm not whatever. So here's this rental car for you to drive. So I'm in this little rental car while he's duking it out with whatever's going on with, I could have cared less. I could have cared less when I was driving, okay? So the purple file, I open it, and there's a lot of paperwork in this file. The first thing that I pulled out that caught my attention was a letter addressed to me, but it was to a P.O. box, and it was open. And I've never had a P.O. box ever in my whole life. So it was, the wheels were kind of turning a bit, and I opened it up, and the first thing I saw was it was legal papers. It was like court documents. And it was paperwork that said my car that I thought was at the Toyota dealership had been repossessed due to non-payment. The car that was paid for was repossessed for non-payment. And it was sold at public auction. And there was a difference between what it sold for and what it was owed. And I don't remember that number right now, 7,000, I think, or 9,000, something like that. It was this difference. So there was a lien filed against me for that, and all the court stuff, involvement, whatever all that was. I don't remember the numbers now. And a warrant for my arrest because I had never shown up for any courtroom proceedings.
I mean, I can't. Like, how long have you been married at this point?
About 2 years. About 2 years. And I couldn't, it would be like you opening something, it was like another, I just couldn't even, my brain couldn't even comprehend it. And I had about the amount of time that I just told you just a split second it felt like, and there he was. He walked into the room, and he saw me holding that paperwork in my hands, and not to sound like really dramatic or whatever, but truly it was a almost demonic change in him that I now know really truly was. He went from this face that I had grown to love and adore was this evil,
Yeah.
just plain evil, and that was the end.
So in that moment, your brain is probably just reeling,
Spinning.
trying to understand. Then all of a sudden, he turns into a different person. What happened immediately after that? Like, where did you go? What did he do? What happened?
He basically, I don't want to use the word attack because it wasn't, it was shoving, you're not leaving me. It was like instantly, I'm like, whatever. He gets it. There weren't a lot of words. It was more looks exchanged or whatever. And it was, you're not going to leave me. You aren't going to leave me, was what he kept repeating over and over again and pushing me, pushing, shoving. And basically, I got knocked around quite a bit that night and pushed me into our bedroom. And I locked the doors, and there it was a big, antique, beautiful home that we lived in with big, heavy doors and woodwork and whatnot in it. And so I felt barricaded kind of in this room, and I heard him out there, and I heard him leave. And I thought, I don't know how to put words into it now, and I still don't, except that it was a state of total and complete shock. And the abuse was, it was sexual in nature. It was not good. It was just not a good few hours. And I remember running a bath and sitting down in this bathtub and just like trying to, what am I going to do? What with a car? Like, why would he do that? We can afford a car. What? I just like nothing was, I couldn't. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, do I call the police? And do I tell the police my husband raped me? No, your husband can't do that. Yeah. I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like Alice in Wonderland went down the tunnel or something. I think a piece of me did kind of go that night. It was just a crazy, crazy time. And then he was beating on the door. Down in the back, one of the back doors that went into this kind of back landing, sort of whatever. He was on the inside door and it was locked, and he was beating and screaming and screaming and screaming, whatever. And I thought about calling 911, and then it turned into crying. Please, please forgive me. Whatever. This whole thing went on, and I don't know why I did, but I went and I thought, I'm embarrassed. It was a huge mansion, and there was 2 floors that were 2 condominiums. We lived down here, and there was another place above us. His guy's name was Jonathan that had the place upstairs, and I was so worried that he would hear all of this. I was embarrassed, and I opened the door, and I let him in, and just picked right back up from when he left. Now
your son at this point,
he's in college.
Was in college. Was he living there with you that night? He wasn't there. He was in college. Okay.
Yeah. He was a few blocks away, actually. He lived just not,
Oh, that's right. You said he was in college right then. Okay. So now all of this is your whole world is falling apart. How did you get out of the house?
It took about 2 days, a little over 2 days. I never really slept, and he finally did just like really pass out.
Was he drinking? Or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot. He had been drinking a lot when he came home and was out there crying and carrying on in the hallway. A lot. Yeah. And it continued for a couple days. And when he was totally out, I ran. I grabbed my purse and I ran. And
so you had to come to grips with the fact that this was your new understanding of this human, this man that you thought loved you. I don't know how you could, because it was almost like he was not the person. Mm-mm. So you had to figure that out. Right. Did you kind of waffle back and forth for a while and kind of go from, this can't be him, there's something,
Yeah. A lot of that time I go back and I try to remember where my mind was, and it gets compressed into this shorter duration of time than it actually was. You know, and trauma can do crazy things to us. Yes. And I felt like I did something wrong, and I was embarrassed. The bank accounts were closed. So I had $20 in my purse, and I went to go use a debit card or credit cards, whatever I had in there. Everything was closed.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So that's right. So he said, tell the story about how he wanted you to sell your businesses or your business.
Yeah, that was my businesses were thriving, and he was, you don't need to do this. You really don't. And he kind of gradually took over the paperwork with it because he was successful in business. And he'd say, do you want me to, you don't need to do all that. I'll just give it to my accountant. Why are you doing all that? You're so cute with all that. Let me handle that. You're so cute with, he would downgrade it by telling me how cute I was or that kind of thing. And it was
interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting in hindsight. I think about that, but he gradually took over that.
That's a
kind
manipulation
of thing.
technique.
Totally,
yes,
totally. But yeah, so he was handling that, and then it was, you're gone all the time. Why are you doing this? Why you don't need to work. You really do not need to work this hard. Let's sell the business. You can focus on, I had started another business. I'm always doing kind of something. And I had a clothing business that I was doing that was rocking. It was 2009, I think, we won the most innovative new spa product in the industry or whatever.
Wow.
We're awarded out in San Francisco. It was starting to really, really grow. And it was during that time, and he was like, just sell it. You don't need to do this. Focus on your clothes. You are so cute. You're so creative. Just have fun, but you don't need all this stress. Why are you doing this? So I did. So I sold it.
So you sold it all, let him, and then he took the money.
But at the closing table, it's like, I don't know if you've ever, like, buying and selling houses, how you sit, and lawyers have all these papers and you're signing. It's the same thing with businesses. And I had sold Naples, I'd sold that one, and I kind of understood how all that worked, and it seemed the same. Seemed that I was doing the same in Milwaukee. I trusted the lawyer that was doing it. You handle taxes. It was an asset sale where they, they did not purchase my corporation. It was cash. It was full price. It was a sweetheart deal. Both of them were. There was no, like, you got to hang on for another 5 years or whatever. There was both of them cash asset sales, and it was a lot of money. I shouldn't have had to ever worry, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was, taxes were taken care of, payroll taxes, and all these things are closed out during business is tied up during this time. All the little loose ends are tied up and handled in a new corporation. Then the assets were transferred into this new corporation that she held. So all that was done, and there was paperwork already drawn up that I thought was the most thoughtful, cool thing. He's like, we need to protect this because we could die in an airplane accident or whatever, and I don't want my kids thinking whatever. This is yours. You've worked so hard for this. This is your son's. So I've created these accounts. This is under your son's name. He won't be able to touch it until he's such and such an age. If this happens or that happens to us, there'll be this is how it'll, so it was like this thoughtful, everything was set up and everything was whatever. And
why wouldn't you trust him?
Exactly.
He's your husband.
Exactly. And none of those things ever actually happened. They didn't actually happen. That account didn't exist. Even simple things like payroll taxes were not paid.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like he had done this before.
Yes, he had.
Yeah. So now you find out that you have nothing.
Right.
I mean, your son is alive.
Right.
You have your health for the most part.
Yeah.
Now you have nothing. You walk out the door, you have $20 in your pocket.
It took a long time to know that, though. I didn't know that. I was trying to figure out, I didn't even know that. I just knew that, why did he shut the accounts? Does he think that shutting down money is going to make me come back? What is this? So I thought I'd just have to wait till I could walk into a bank and handle whatever. But everything was closed. But I didn't know it was gone.
Okay. You just didn't think you had access to it.
Right.
But it was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, there was nothing.
Oh, so, okay. This is when I was reading your book, by the way.
Yeah.
As I was reading it, I'm like, I don't know if I can take any more of this. Please, something happened. And I know that you ended up, there's big things I want to talk about. You in court with him, and also homelessness.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about first?
Let's
talk about your homelessness.
Okay.
No, let's start with court. Let's start with him.
Okay.
what happened with him, and then we'll backtrack a little bit.
Well,
with
we
your
were in
homelessness.
court a lot. I mean, there were multiple times that I kept getting dragged in and out of scenarios. And just to give you an idea of the kind of charmer he was, at one point in time, my divorce attorney, who had seen me in, I was obviously a woman who had been abused. Anybody could have seen that. You pick it out in a crowd. I showed up for what was supposed to be a final divorce hearing, and she wanted to cancel it and go to lunch with him because he loved me, and he had come to see her and taken her to lunch and convinced her, whatever. So there were multiple times it drug out forever, and he would look and laugh and say, "You're going to have another birthday before you're going to get a divorce." And it was, horrible. But the ultimate, when I was issued the first order of protection, I was actually in Minnesota at that time. I never lived in Minnesota, but I kind of ran in a 3-state area, and I was in the Twin City area in Minneapolis. And the police basically at that point were saying, you have to get a restraining order. You have to. And I heard that everywhere I went. I was in and out of police stations all the time with issues happening. And the way it works is you would get a no contact for 30 days, and if you break that, 60-day, 90-day. And then there's a restraining order, 30, 60, 90 days. And then there's what they call an order of protection. And that was 30-day, 60-day, 90-day. Extreme cases, they'd issue a 2-year. And I didn't really want to do any of it. I felt forced to by the women's shelter and by the police stations were telling me, you have to build this paper trail. You have to.
Right.
And so I did. And I went in with, I told people it looked like a pillow. I had all these copies of emails and transcribed text messages and, whatever, everything notarized and very official. And I had taken these little yellow post-ups and put it around the outside of those pages with notes on them that I could grab in a second and be able to show evidence of when he did this and when he did that and the different times he had, whatever, assaults and whatnot. And he came with his lawyers and whatnot. I came with a woman that was a kind of a companion from one of the shelters. They told me that I wouldn't, I'd only get a first name and I'd never see her again, but she would be there to just hold my hand, basically. Yeah. She wasn't an attorney, and she did. She was on this side, she held my hand, and she said, you can look at me if you want, but I really don't even want you to look at me. I want you to look at the judge, and don't stop looking at her. Never take your eyes off of her, no matter what he says, no matter what they do.
Yes.
Look at the judge and answer slowly and detailed. Don't get in a hurry, just slowly and detailed. I'm like, okay. So I did just that, and he screamed and cried, "I love you, come home." It was crazy, this dramatic scene, but she wound up taking the papers and going through all of it, and to make a long story short, straight out of the hoop, issued a 2-year order of protection, which was the maximum that they had at that time.
I mean, I'm just kind of pausing for a second because I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, here you sit, super successful woman, independent, your whole life pretty much, and this man manipulated you. I think just as a note to everybody who's ever going to watch this video, to know that it can happen.
It absolutely can happen.
And when he's over there crying, "I love you," I'm sorry, I'm being all dramatic myself.
No, he was.
Like, how pathetic, It's like, but it's so easy to fall into that feeling bad and feeling guilty. Well, maybe but you held that woman beside you holding your hand.
She held me up.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, in that time, it was sort of never really feeling love from anybody that made me vulnerable to this person who showed me so much.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of it, coming out of it, I heard all the time from my own attorney, from police, like, how could you be so stupid? Didn't you see? Wasn't there like, right. I had so much shame.
Yeah.
I was like this crumpled little ball. I tell people I felt like sand, like I wasn't a rock anymore. I was nobody's strength. I'm incredibly broken and ashamed, embarrassed, humiliated. Instead of feeling wounded and battered, I felt ashamed.
Yeah.
I don't, how else to
But
to
that makes
describe
sense to me because you had been the person who could get out of anything and turn things around and be successful, and you'd proven that, and then now you're somebody called you on it.
Yeah.
It was like, no, I can one-up you and I will destroy your whole life, which he thought he was doing. But I do want to pause for a minute because you said to me when you were talking, because I was thinking about me if I was in that situation and, you know, would I want revenge? But you had a judge, and I want to get to this point.
Yes.
What did the judge say to you when you had to decide what you wanted to do?
She was wonderful. It was a female judge, and they had, she wasn't supposed to be on the case, and they warned me when I went in at the last minute, she is tough, she always sides with men. It was like, it was just numb, I didn't even want to be in the same room with him. The thought of being in the same state, in the same room, terrified me at that point.
Yeah.
And she took me back to her chambers after looking at all the paperwork and said, you know, that they were issuing this. I guess they'd already made that decision. Then she called me back into her chambers and said, you don't go after him. What he did is a crime. And the state goes after him. It's not you. This is a crime. And I'm like, okay, because I never really had thought about that before. And she said, what he's done is illegal, and he will be arrested, and I can tell you that he'll go to prison for what he's done. Absolutely, he'll go to prison. But I also can tell you that he'll never, ever serve probably any more than 6 months. I'm like, okay. And I really didn't care about any of that at that point. I've never really had a revenge, didn't have a sense of revenge in me. But she said, the only way to do this is with you. You're the key witness. If you're not going to testify against him, then there is no case. You are the only witness in this. You understand that? I'm like, yeah. And she said, you'll be in court for a minimum of 2 years. It'll probably take a year to get there. And then you're going to be in court for at least 1 year, and he could probably draw it out for 2. How are you going to feel when he comes out of prison? And I was just like, it absolutely, I tell people I left with this maximum order of protection with more fear inside of me than I've ever felt my whole life. But it was wise advice from her, and I will be forever grateful. And actually, they have a copy of Suddenly, and I've been able to get in touch with all those people that helped me in Minnesota.
That's wonderful.
Oh, they were amazing, those women, where I couldn't cry thinking about them. They were amazing for me. But she said, you know, you need a new name. You need a new birth certificate. You need a new social security number. You need a new life. Now, we're going to hold him here, and you're going to sign these papers. You're not going to testify. You're refusing to testify. Go and start a new life. And that's what I did.
Well, it's a perfect segue, too, because I think that's amazing, and I think that judge was incredibly wise, and she was caring for you, and she wanted you to be free from all of this past. And so you still have nothing. You have your dignity now. You have a potential future. But there's one piece of the puzzle that's missing. And so I want to get back to this time of homelessness that you had, because you said to me that you saw all kinds of miracles when you were homeless. So kind of go back to some of those. So first of all, homelessness for you was what? It was living in different places. It was, okay.
Yeah.
And you were trying to hide as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, constantly on the run. And many times when I left where I was at, most of the time that I left where I was at was because of fear that I brought into the household. Though I never slept on a bench. I didn't have to sleep in the park. I spent mostly awake hours. Even if it was in a bed, it was awake hours and women's shelters. And most of my time was with friends, little bit of time with family. It was with my father for a very short period of time in the beginning. And just to give a little detail on that, he bought a gun, and he was sleeping with a gun under his pillow. And it was like, I don't know my dad to be that way. And so I brought this level of fear. Wherever I went, I brought a level of fear.
Because he was threatening you. And didn't he break into your house or your dad? He broke in and was looking for you? Didn't that happen? Did I read that in your book? Oh, I thought he came into the house. And
he did. That's when I actually went back to my own house.
Oh. Share that real quick. And
That was so stupid. I just can't even believe I did that. But when I left, I ran away. And so I literally had on, jeans and a sweatshirt or something. It was Milwaukee and probably cold outside. I don't remember exactly.
It was cold. It was
Milwaukee. It was probably cold. Yeah. And so it's like, all right, I want my dog and I want some of my stuff. And so I thought I was manipulating him through phone calls and whatnot. If maybe we can work this out, but I want you to not be there. I'm coming with my dad in a moving truck, and we're going to get some of my things, and we're going to move them to Minnesota, and we'll just keep in, whatever. But I don't want you to be there. And he said, okay. And so I thought, well, he's not going to be there. I'm in control of all this, right? So I got there, and yeah, he was there. And I walked in the back door, and my dad was outside with my dog and his dog, and he was standing in his wedding suit, which is like,
yeah, that's weird.
It was really creepy weird. He was standing at the stove cooking, and yeah, he tried to strangle me within just a couple minutes of being in the house, and I was hands around my neck, up against the wall, like in a split seconds again, looking at my dad outside with the dogs, wondering, is this really happening? Am I going to just like die like this? Why did I do this? How is this? What's my dad? Is dad going to walk out? Like all these things are flying through my mind. And I remember saying, get your hands off me, or something of the sort. And I heard a loud thunk. And my son had come in the back door. He would come at that stage of the game. He'd like show up on a skateboard with a backpack full of dirty clothes, saying, "I'm hungry, Mom," whatever. And he was home a lot from school doing just that kind of thing. So he came in, and yeah, the thunk that I heard was him reaching up on the counter, grabbing a hold of. It was a huge salt shaker that I had, and he knocked down this peppermill and came tearing into the office. And he dropped me and said, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" And
I'm getting ready to hit you in the head with
yeah. So that was a second. He wound up running. I did pack up as much as I could possibly pack up and take it. And I look back on that now when we talk about homelessness. There were things that it was like $200 or something for this storage thing. And I would muster up enough money to pay for the storage, but I was in somebody's basement or in somebody's couch or in somebody's extra bedroom, or it was like that. And I sold art, I made art, I did hair. A couple people would have me do hair in their home, and I'd sell things that I made, and eventually got enough money to buy a car.
That's pretty impressive, actually. You must be very resourceful and entrepreneurial.
I kind of am.
Yeah, I see that in you.
Yeah.
So you said that you were a church-going person. And you had talked to me earlier when we were speaking the other day, and I think you talk about it in your book too, how that you were, you said it earlier, your mother, after she passed away, that you wanted more than just a religion. You were seeking, so you were in this moment of seeking. So I want you to talk a little bit about, first of all, some bad experiences you had while you were homeless, while you were seeking, and then move into a moment that changed your life forever.
Okay. When you say bad experiences, homeless,
church,
church experiences. Okay.
Christian.
Okay. So
that we don't repeat so we can learn from you. Yeah.
Okay. First of all Christian people don't button their collars up to here and wear a cameo and have I always wear wild jewelry. I've always had wild hair. What I have is who I am, and I was younger then, and so probably was even wilder or whatever. So there's a judgment that happens when a woman walks into church, number one, single. The married women go into these cliques and stare at you or whatever. And so there was weird vibes like that. And a lot of that time was when I was in Iowa, and they were real, more conservative. They were just very conservative. And I felt like...
And you walk in with red and jewelry and... I love it though. But go ahead.
But I did, and I got judged, and they just were like, they were condemning me to hell, and I wanted Jesus. I was hurting so bad, I wanted Jesus, and I was listening to YouTube and this and that, anything I could get my hands on, reading. I had Jesus Calling. I would read Jesus Calling. It would have scripture, and then I would Google the scripture. I had to save money to buy a Bible. I still have that Bible. They're expensive, I finally got a Bible. So I was like learning myself, but I would walk in, and I was never ever greeted with a greeting. It was a standoff kind of thing. I had a Bible study that I'd gotten involved in before that.
Tell about that.
This one's like really crazy. This was, Mom was dying, and I was really, really seeking. And it was a large, very large church in the suburb that I lived in Milwaukee. And they had a large women's group Bible study thing going on. And they were talking about grieving and death. And I'm like, I need this. I'm going to lose Mom. I don't know how to do that. I need this. This is so perfect. And one of my clients was involved with it, and I thought, this is so perfect. I'm going to know somebody. I'll meet some friends that are seeking the Lord, and maybe I wanted to learn about Jesus. I wanted to learn so badly. And I was invited out to lunch by one of the people, or it was a coffee house, I think it was a week, or it met once a week, and it might have been like 2 weeks into it, something like that. And I never really even spoke, and I just sat and listened. And I didn't know that Genesis was the beginning. I didn't know anything, right? So, just listening to these women or whatever, but they had said something, asked a question, and I used the word chaos in my answer, that I felt like everything in my life felt like chaos when they asked me to describe what was going on. That with my mom and my dad and, what was happening, it felt like chaos. And so she brought that up, that she recognized that word, and that word was demonic. And
the word chaos?
The word chaos was demonic.
Wow.
It was the work of the devil, and that I wore black all the time, and that they had seen that my whole staff wore black all the time, and that there were massages, that we gave massages at the salon that I had, and who knows what, it was really, really bizarre. But they accused me of being a witch and practicing witchcraft because of my whole staff wearing black. And aromatherapy, we did aromatherapy, that was witchcraft.
Wow, that's just absurd.
It was really absurd. So I was thrown out of that Bible study.
Thrown out of a Bible study. You can put that down for your...
I was asked to leave.
I was thrown out of a Bible study.
I was thrown out of a Bible study, yeah. But yeah, so I had a lot of crazy things like that.
Wow. But you had, so these experiences, you were seeking, and these were blocks for, I just think about me and how we need to be so gracious and so kind and so loving. And but you said in your book, and I know we've talked about it, you had an experience where you said, and I don't know if I'm going to quote it the right way, where you said you went to a church and love met you at the door.
Yes. And like a giant hug.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell what happened then. So
I was at that, just so you know, that at that point in time, I looked like me, except I had 75 stitches in my nose. I had 2 black eyes. I had black and blue bruising on my neck. My nose had this huge, looked like a tampon or something, this huge thing that they put in there to hold it open, and this artificial cartilage and this breathing tube that was taped to my face. I looked like a monster.
it was multiple things that had happened to you, right?
Yes.
It was,
and my hand was broken.
It was from an accident and your husband.
Dog.
A dog. Yeah, okay.
A dog, all within like 1 week. It was just like bang, 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 bang.
Yeah, that's when I was like, can
happening.
this story get good? Can Jesus come in? So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was so broken at that point in time, really. I didn't even know up from down. But when I walked in, I looked terrible. I looked like the women should go to the corners and stare at me or whatever. But I was totally greeted by... Jesus was there, for starters. Jesus was there. He was in the people that were there. They were just amazing. And it was a giant mega church, like really, really big. And I didn't know that when I was going there. I was like, where can I get? Where's close that I can walk to? How am I going to do this? Whatever. And I found that place. And when I got there, I thought, oh, I'm not going in there. There's going to be a lot of people. And then I thought, no, I can just like disappear. I won't stand out there.
Right.
There's so many people.
Right.
I
You'll
won't
blend
stand
in.
out, right? And yeah, they greeted me with a tremendous amount of love and wound up coming up beside me in many, many ways. And I was still, up until the time that she passed, in contact with the one pastor that I connected with there. Her name is Pat Moe. Wonderful, wonderful.
So you
woman.
said that day, though, that you were up in the balcony trying to kind of get away from everybody, and you were on your own, and the pastor was talking.
Yes. My thought and being where I was at was I could see the exit. I was above, so if he walked in, I would be able to see him, because I was always looking. I was always sure he was going to find me.
Oh,
again,
you're talking about your ex or your husband at that time. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So it was a bird's eye view of whatever, and Pastor Tim, his name was Tim, came and was speaking on. I had never heard the word Abba before. I didn't know what Abba meant. I didn't know any of it, but he came from an abusive childhood, and he was sharing the abuse that he had walked through and the feeling of rejection and never feeling loved, and how it put him in such a vulnerable place as an adult, and how Abba had come in. He talked about the spirit of adoption. I felt like in that giant sanctuary there was like thousands of people around me, like he was just like, we've all had those moments.
Yes.
Like, he wrote this just for me, and everyone's probably staring at me or whatever. And I should add with that's the very first time that I was in worship, and my hands just like those, they just went up by themselves.
Yes.
There was so much Jesus there, and I never had been in a church that they were all real stuffy, and like nobody really worshiped. And they were big worshipers. But yeah, so I experienced an amazing worship and church service, and then it stopped, and everybody started singing again, and I stood, and everybody around me stood, and they all started filing out when the music was done. And I sat down, and they were like movie seats that like pop up behind you. So I went down on the floor on my knees, and I had a winter coat, and I was sobbing, just sobbing. If you're real, and if you're Abba, and if you're what Tim says you are, I need to see you. I need to know what everybody is talking about. I need this, Jesus, if you're real. Show me. And I had, we were talking about this earlier, but I mean, it's like with the breathing tube, and my nose bled all the time, and I didn't know if it was like blood or, from snot, tears, but I felt like a total mess, right? And somebody came behind me and like put like underneath my arms like this and lifted me back up into my chair, and I had that, oh my gosh, like trying to wipe my face off really quick so I didn't look too terrible, and I turned around and no one was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
The arms of Jesus picked you up, and he put his arms around you and lifted you up.
Yeah.
Well, that's so absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
so
it makes me want to cry every time I think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You had a moment of desperation, and he met you right.
He met me right there.
Yeah.
Right
like
there.
you said, he's close to the brokenhearted.
Oh yeah.
And you were definitely brokenhearted.
Yeah.
But that was the moment that you needed, and you can probably look back and see
everything changed.
Yes, from that
Everything
from that
changed
point forward.
From that point forward, yeah.
And you started learning. So there's so much. I know we're like, but I'm just going to keep on. We got a couple more books to talk about, but we can wait till the end. And if you're
keep
watching,
going, girl.
Yeah, if you're watching right now, I want you to like make a comment and say you're here and that you're enjoying what Ada's saying. And we're going to talk about these books because they are her heart, and she has a heart for women, and we'll talk about that in a minute. There's a couple more things I really, really want you to talk about, because you came out. Now your whole life didn't immediately change. You were still homeless, you were still seeking, but what did God teach you after that point?
Oh, so much. So much. I believe that, I look back on those times, and some of it was, I think that Satan kind of throws roadblocks at us along the way, starting with childhood of, we get ourselves programmed to like, you just wait for people to reject you. You wait for people to, whatever. Strongholds. They really kind of are. So some of that I recognize was that, and some of it was myself, and some of it was the Lord allowing some things to happen to teach me. And I think some of that time he needed me alone. I don't think I was supposed to be. I think it was his protection as much as it was anything else. I truly do, until he got me into the right spot. But I don't even know where to begin.
Well, I know. It's so much to talk about, because that was such a pivotal part of your life.
Major miracles.
You
major.
experienced miracles with money.
Huge financial blessings.
Yes.
Out of nowhere. And from like a woman's shelter to a 6-figure job. Boom, I just had this job offered to me. I'm crying about not having a college education and feeling like a stupid hairdresser. And I was given a job as a college administrator.
See, God is so amazing.
He is amazing. And he's like, I'm gonna fix
check
that.
this out. Oh, boom.
Yeah, he's like, he was so good to me. Financial miracles. I experienced and witnessed incredible healings and things with other people where, you know, I would joke and say they were coming to my house for a haircut and they would get baptized in the shampoo bowl. And then the miracles would happen. Friday night prayer group. I started having prayer group and Bible studies in my home and just inviting people in. And we would watch church online with this church in New York City at the time. We were all into Times Square Church. We'd watch those things. We did all kinds of stuff together. And the miracles were just unbelievable that happened. Yeah.
So you started seeing evidence of, in a really powerful way, of the reality of the existence of God.
Yes.
That God is real, that God is interested in the details of your life.
Every detail.
Every detail.
Every single detail. Yeah.
And you were delighting in him and he was delighting in you.
He was.
Yeah.
And he teaches you how to, like, I think if women are watching, you'll be able to relate to this one. It's a silly one, but I thought about it the other day because I gave something to a friend that was from that moment. I had clung to these clothes that were ridiculous clothes that I was never going to wear again. They were like from glam days that, whatever. I was never going to wear that stuff again, right? But it was like, I had to have something to cling to, right?
Yes.
And the Lord's like, you need to give that. You need to give those things away. I'm like, but then I won't have any clothes. I only have 3 pairs of black pants and a black dress and, whatever. But I did. And it wound up, I had everything hanging because I didn't have a dresser. So it was cheaper to buy hangers than a dresser. So I had 70 empty hangers. And I got a call from a woman. Her name is Karen. She's amazing. She has a ministry with children. She adopts me.
Oh,
anyway,
wow.
Yeah, she's incredible. But I met her for the first time, and she said, I know you're really artsy. I've got a backstage pass for Chico's design lab, and everything there is $1. You want to go with me? I'll get a pass. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I drove to Fort Myers, and we went to this, it's where Chico's back in the day. Yeah. It did their whatever. It was near Sanibel Island.
Wow.
You're right. So we went in, and it was a blast. And I had been giving, I think it was $100 that day. Somebody left a $100 tip, and it's like, okay. I knew the Lord was telling me, good girl, you have 70 empty hangers and only 4 black things left to your name. So I went to Chico's and got all this amazing stuff for $1 and $2 a piece for all this stuff. And I came home and it filled exactly 70 hangers.
Of course it did.
He's so good. I never would have guessed that, but yeah, so we did all kinds of stuff.
So you go, and I've got like maybe 2 more. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but it wasn't over yet.
Right.
You had money, you saved money now, and you're moving, right?
Yep.
You decided to move back to Florida.
Yes.
And you had another incident with your ex. Were you an ex? Was he an ex yet? Was he your ex-husband
yet?
Okay, with your ex-husband.
Yeah.
And talk about what happened.
Okay. I had a year of financial restoration myself working at the college. And I felt the Lord really tell me that he was moving me again. And that was a big faith test for me, to resign from a job like that and leave that was security for me. And I knew I was supposed to come back to Florida. And I went to Naples and had a moving truck filled with all my stuff, had a nephew that I paid to, like, I'm going to drive my car if you'll drive this moving truck, and then I'll fly you back or whatever, and you can get a little beach time while you're down there. So his name's Mitch. Mitch is driving, and we would stop at gas stations along the way or whatever and gas up, and it was hundreds of dollars. It was way, I don't remember right now, but it would stop at 100. I remember the tank stopping, or the debit card stopping at that. Then you'd have to scan it again or whatever.
Wow, okay.
So we would stop at gas stations. He'd fuel the truck and my car, and I'd go in and get his list of junk, whatever, all the junk he wanted, his Cheetos and his whatever. So I was in doing just that, and the guy said no. He was like almost non-English speaking. Said no, it was declined, and I said no, it's not declined. Just do it again. And he scanned it again. He said no, it's declined. And I thought, well, it's probably because I've used it so much, and we're in these mountains in the middle of the night in Tennessee. I walked outside and flipped it over to call the 800 number on back to, I figured it was a fraud protection kind of thing. And Mitch was waving me from, hey, it didn't go through. I need it over here again. I'm like, okay, don't worry, I'll get this. So I called, and to make a long story short, during the time that I was married to Damien, I signed paperwork, and it was very clearly my signature on it. It wasn't forged. I did sign it, taking responsibility for hundreds of thousands of dollars in back taxes that he owed from 15 years before I ever even lived in the state that he lived in, or 20 years, many years before I was ever there, even in that state. And yeah, so we're in the middle of the night, and we're in the mountains, and we have empty gas, and all the money I had, everything I had, was in this bank account, and it was levied. It was empty. And I look back on it now, and it's just, even this in itself had the Lord's hand on it. Because I called my dad and said, I really, I need your help. Will you help me? And he's like, okay, what now? Whatever. And he gave a credit card number verbally to this man who barely spoke English at this gas station. And it did it over and over and over again, for a hotel for Mitch and I, for food, for gas to get us from Tennessee all the way down to Naples. With a verbal, they wouldn't do that.
No.
It's like that was totally the Lord. But yeah, I went into the IRS office, and they said, here's the order of protection, here's everything, whatever. And they said, yeah, it's really sad that you've gone through all that, but you sue him, you go after him. The IRS doesn't give your money back. We will lift any other. We won't hold you responsible for the rest of it, but your money's gone. And that refund that you were banking on, I thought I had 6 months to live on. I had enough money saved that I would support me for 6 months. But so when I got there, I was on zero.
So how was your life different pre-Jesus? How would you have handled that? Post-Jesus, did you handle it differently?
Oh, yeah.
At that point? Yes.
Oh, yeah. I was, I wasn't tough. No one would, you wouldn't even think that I was a tough person, but I was tough with business, and I would have figured it out. I would have rolled my sleeves up. I would have figured it out. I would have done what I had to do, but in a forceful, aggressive, assertive sort of way. I would have figured it out, and I probably would have nailed his butt to the wall. I would have done everything I could to. I would have.
I thought of just the scripture where Paul says that he learned to be content. He could be content with everything, or he could be content with nothing.
Right.
There's something to be said. It doesn't mean, contentment means that you are trusting God. It doesn't mean that you give up.
That's right.
But you're believing that he was going to take care of you no matter what happens. And clearly, he has.
Oh, yeah.
I look at your life, I kind of think of Job. Job had all these blessings, and then his whole life, was taken basically from him, and then God blessed him again. And, that's kind of, I know that maybe you wouldn't compare yourself to Job, but you've been through a lot.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking, I'm looking at here, what we've got, if people are commenting. So we're going to talk about one more thing, and then we're going to talk about your books.
Yeah.
So if you're watching right now and you would like one of her books, we have 3 that we're giving away. We're giving away Suddenly. We're giving away Beautifully Broken, which is an interactive journey, and it's a journaling tool. And then if you have a child, grandchild, Annie Banani Goes to Giggle Paws. She did all the artwork in this, by the way. This is your dog, right?
Annie Banani is my dog, yeah.
So cute. I love it so much. And these are all signed copies of her books. So if you want one of these, if you're in particular you want one, I want you to comment on the Facebook feed, or I'll see if I can get onto the YouTube, but probably most of you are on Facebook. So while we're doing this last question, you can be commenting on that. There's one thing I don't want to forget. God has taken you so far, and we could, if you want more about her story, you have to read the book because it's all in there. You're doing really well now. But there was a person in your life, and I want to talk about her because I want to kind of give a warning a little bit to some people who may be dabbling in a few things.
Okay.
So I want you to talk about G and how she influenced your life. That'll kind of be the final question, then we'll talk about the books.
Okay. Where do you want me to go with that?
I want you to start with your relationship with her and how she influenced you, and then how you had a moment when you knew.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So G was a client at the salon in Naples for years. And sometimes I did her hair and sometimes I didn't. And when I was doing hair, I worked with assistants. So I didn't like all the small talk that came with salons sometimes. So I would do the consultation, come in, I was, foiling, painting, whatever. And then someone else would come over and be with that guest until it was time for me to do a cut or whatever. They took them from there. And so I had finished that, and she grabbed a hold of my hand, and she had all this foil in her hair, and she grabbed my hand and held my hand between her two hands like this. I'm like, okay, what's this all about? And she proceeds to read my mail. Okay, she tells me about my mother's going to die and how it's going to happen. And
what did you say? Read your what?
My mail.
Is that what it's called? Read your. She was reading.
She wasn't.
Reading.
When I say read my mail, she was psychic.
So I just want to make sure everybody's okay.
Yes. So when I say read my mail, she was giving me this psychic reading.
Okay.
And she was describing my mother's death and where my mother lived, and that I was going to live there, and all this whatever. And I had just got back from my mother's house, and my grandmother had died in the way that she described, and it kind of creeped me out. I thought, what the heck? And I said, no, you're talking about my grandmother, not about my mom. And lo and behold, years later, she was talking about my mom, and she was very accurate, very spot on with her reading, however you want to call that. So she contacted me and said, how are you doing? What's going on? I'm like, I'm losing my mom. Remember when you told me, blah, 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 blah. And so this relationship began with this person that I really didn't know her. I don't know that I could even pick her out in a room of 10 people. I don't know that I would remember what she looked like, but I remembered her doing that. But this relationship started with this soothing kind of voice on the phone, and she was into meditation, and she talked about, I think about some of it now, it's hilarious, her angels, and her angel was Adonai, and yeah, it's oh my gosh, but I didn't know any of this, but I thought she was this spiritual kind of person, and she was so accurate that it really drew me in, and she was into charts and horoscopes and dabbling. You can't dabble with the devil. You really can't. And I didn't understand that's what I was doing. I truly didn't. I just thought it was kind of fun. I was a Cancer, and I was creative, and I seemed like everything that Cancers are. And so it was fun for me to hear that, and she was that kind of person. I'm going to fast forward now that I'm with him. As that all happened, she encouraged me big time with him. I would say, I'm not attracted to him, but da-da-da-da-da. And she said, it's pretty perfect, isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty perfect. Sometimes when God puts someone, she always spoke about God, she spoke about Jesus. She was into her rosaries, she talked about rosaries, and you need to do this, whatever. So I thought she was Christian, and that she had a psychic gift, and that she was a really good card reader, and knew a lot about horoscopes. I didn't know.
Why would you know, right?
I didn't know. I put it all into one basket, and I believed her because she was so accurate. She's the one that was calling and saying, you're in danger, you're in danger, you're in danger. Find the purple file. I'm like, what are you talking about? What is a purple file? We don't have purple files or whatever. And she was right. And I was in danger. So in a way, G saved my life. And when I was homeless, she would call me.
But she also told you to marry him, or that he.
Oh yes,
but
she did.
okay, so go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, she did. Really big time. It was this. They say that I'm not calling her Satan, so I don't want anybody to twist my words.
Of course.
But evil or Satan, or however you want to put it, doesn't come with horns and fangs and whatever. He comes disguised as an angel of light.
Right.
So she was giving me everything that I needed and wanted to hear, but really taking me down this path that was super, super wrong.
Yeah.
And before I decided to move to Naples, I was kind of at that feeling pulled or whatever. She lived in Naples. I came down, looked, rented a place, made the decision to move or whatever, and went to see her. And it was instantaneous when I saw her and when she saw me. She was absolutely could see the light in me, and
Wow.
I could see in her the demonic. And she actually sent me an email of, your God has brought you this far, so you need to just, trust him. I know he's not going to let go of you now, but this is not my path, and I can't walk this with you. And
I mean, I think, and I wanted you to tell that story because I think that sometimes we do things and we think they're harmless.
They're not.
And they're not harmless. Mm-hmm. And so we can think that we're getting something that's a reading. And the truth of the matter is they can be accurate.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
they are hearing things.
The wrong spirit, so.
They're hearing spirit,
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So they're hearing things that are accurate. But in the end, it wasn't good. Mm-hmm. And we should always be turning toward the Lord and away from those things. But I just wanted to put I wanted to put that in people's minds so they understand, because, and we won't go into this, but you also talked about in your book how you had a deliverance, like you had there was a deliverance ministry where women came around you and prayed for you. Mm-hmm. And as I read your book, it almost seemed like that was also another really big breakthrough. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know there are people that are watching, and some of you who have been watching, maybe you've been watching the whole interview, and you need deliverance. And I just want to say that, when I'm talking about deliverance, I mean you're overwhelmed. You feel like you never can attain victory. You feel like you never can overcome whatever you're going through. It is possible. And you can have people around you praying for you, and you can understand who you are in Christ, that there is power in the name of Jesus, and you can pray for things to change and for him to help you, and he will help you. Yeah. And when we see Ada sitting here with everything that she's gone through, and she was down in the pit time and time again, we didn't even scratch the surface of your life, No. But there's a testimony that she has here. And I just want to put that out there and make sure you know that if you need prayer, that I'm sure you'd be willing to pray too. And maybe we could take a moment after we talk about giving the books away, and you can pray for people who are listening, who need a prayer, need a touch from the Holy Spirit, and then need deliverance. Yeah. And maybe they're discouraged or whatever it is. If you're open to doing that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's read some of the comments. And I don't know if I'm going to see all of them. Let's see. So we've been talking a lot. Okay, be fine. Oh, Janice Hepburn says, suddenly things do happen.
Yeah.
And let's see. This must be Charlene. Ada, thank you for sharing with us this evening. And Melody Boynton says there was so much Jesus there. Mm-hmm. And then we have some praise hands from Erica. And thank you for sharing your story. And Erica says, Ada, you have such a beautiful spirit. Thank you for sharing. Janice says, God is good. Lainey says, an amazing story. I'm so glad that people like you are willing to share their awesome stories. Shauna says, you're amazing, Ada. And then Erica says that she would love Beautifully Broken.
It's hers.
So it's yours, Erica. Mm-hmm. Erica, there's the camera. Erica, you're going to love this. That's awesome. And Janice Hepburn, she would love one of her books. I think that Suddenly would be perfect for Janice. And these are signed copies. And then Melody, she said, I would love to have the children's book for my grandchildren.
Yay.
Well, you're going to have to fight me over it, Melody. No, we're going to make that happen. That's awesome. And so then Jody says, thank you so much, Ada, for sharing. And thank you, Pastor Bettina, for bringing us her story. So inspirational.
Awesome.
I totally agree. I mean, you have a story that is, I love the fact that you're using your life. You're just like, this is just all, where you felt like you were sand when you said sand. We were talking in my office at one point in my life. I felt like I was a piece of crumpled up paper that was thrown down on the ground and that God would never use.
Yeah.
But God takes those things that we think are unusable.
Yes.
And he's like, no, wait a minute, check this out. And so what I would love for you to do, if you want to look into the camera and take a few minutes to pray for the viewers, wherever the Spirit leads you, and that'll be our closing for tonight.
Absolutely. Is this the camera?
This camera right here, yeah.
All right. Father, I thank you for this time together. I thank you for this opportunity. I thank you for the ears and the hearts that are listening. Lord, I pray that you touch them in the same way that you've touched me, that you reach down deep, Father, deep into their hearts. You know their needs, you know their pain, you know their suffering. You know the times that I felt that I couldn't go on, that I didn't have the strength to go on, that I didn't have the courage to go on, that I truly didn't even have the desire to go on. I call out to those people tonight, you that think that it's impossible, you that think that you can't take another step, and I tell you that you can. With God, absolutely all things are possible. Lord, I ask you to fill them with your Spirit. Start at the bottom of their feet and bubble up to the top of their head with hope and joy and peace, and know that with you, all things are possible. There is joy to be found even in the hardest of places. There's joy to be found because you're there and you make a way. You are absolutely, totally the light on our feet, that lamp, that light on our path. When you don't know what to do, Father, you're there every day saying just this very next step, one step at a time to freedom. Father, I thank you that you've shown me that deliverance is not a one-time thing, that salvation is not a one-time thing, but that it's a path, and that we're walking that path into the day that we meet you. Lord, I ask you to speak to those today. If there's any of you out there that don't know Jesus and really would like to know him in a better, deeper, more intimate way, that it's not just someone that you visit on Sunday, I ask you to type in to the comments wherever you're at that it's me, contact me, and we'll pray with you personally. If there's some of you that have kind of strayed and you're thinking, I want that, I need to get back with that. I used to be close to Jesus and now I'm off on a path in another direction. Maybe I married the wrong person. Maybe I'm partying with the wrong people. Maybe it's the wrong crowd I'm hanging out with. I know something's not right in my life. It's never the wrong time to turn. Tonight is the right time to turn back. I would ask you just to have the courage to write your name, say it's me you're talking to. Write your name in the comments and we will reach out to you. I just thank you, Lord. Thank you again for the precious hearts that have watched. I pray blessings on this church and Pastor Bettina's ministry. I pray that the hearts and minds of women, that this floods and reverberates way beyond the airways tonight, and that any bit of pain and trauma that I've had is turned into blessings and hope. Because with you, Lord, all things are possible. I thank you, Lord, and I love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And I'm going to have her books in my office. If you are interested in a book, and I'm going to have them, and you can purchase one. But I want to get it in your hands. Even if you think you can't buy it, I'll make sure you get it in your hands. I feel that passionately about her story. So anyway, until next time, have an amazing and blessed week. And remember that God sees you, God loves you, and there is hope for you.
Amen.